never know for sure what made Nicol's Pisco Punch so, well, punchy, but there's a compelling argument to be made that it might have been cocaine. Hello and welcome to My Tiny Bottles, the project where I'm exploring my grandmother's legacy of miniature liquor bottles, one tiny bottle at a time. I'm your host, Tammy Coxon. I was pretty darn excited when I discovered bottle 73, Inca Pisco from Peru. Not only did it come in an amazing looking bottle, but it's a lesser known spirit that I really like and that I didn't really expect to be in Grandma's collection. Although, given how amazing the bottle looks, it's no surprise at all that it ended up there. I know I would have picked it up for her in a heartbeat. It's a figurine of a seated man with his hands on his knees with a matte black finish, copied or styled after artworks called huacos, which were produced by the pre-Columbian indigenous people of Peru, including the Incas that it's named after. In the 1960s and 70s, the company released a whole series of these bottles, large and small, in a variety of different shapes. Most are black like mine, but others were silver or gold. Given how iconic and collectible they are, I was really surprised that I couldn't find a website devoted to documenting all the different varieties. But not only did that not exist, it was hard to find out much history about the brand at all. I did get some much appreciated help from Alfredo Spinelli on one of the mini bottle collectors pages on Facebook. He tipped me off that the creator of Inca Pisco was Mario Ranuzzi, and with that name, I was finally able to Google deep enough to find a 12-year-old magazine article that filled in some of the backstory. That article was written by Guillermo Torolira, who is the go-to guy on the history of Pisco. Pisco's history goes way back farther than the period that this bottle came from, so before I talk about my bottle, I want to talk about that. Pisco is a grape brandy produced in the winemaking regions of Chile and Peru. There's a lot of debate between the two countries as to who originated Pisco, but it's generally considered to be of Peruvian origin and that Peruvian Piscos are higher quality. It's been produced there since the late 1500s or early 1600s. It stayed pretty local for the next couple hundred centuries because Spain tightly controlled all exports from Peru. But when Peru gained its independence from Spain, its ports opened to international trade and the Pisco began to flow. And a lot of it floated straight up the coast of the Americas to San Francisco, with the first documented official import there happening in 1839. At the time, San Francisco was an isolated backwater, but that would all change in 1849 when the gold rush began. For many, Pisco was their alcohol of choice. Its popularity would only grow in the decades that followed, with much of it being mixed into Pisco Punch. As I talked about in bottle 72, Myers Rum, punch was a general term, not a specific recipe, and in the early days, that was true of Pisco Punch as well. It was just punch, made with Pisco instead of another spirit. But a man named Duncan Nicol would change that when he took over an important San Francisco watering hole, Parker's Bank Exchange Saloon, in 1893. His Pisco Punch became so renowned that Nicol would gain the nickname Pisco John. He was very secretive about the recipe, but based on extensive research, also by Guillermo Torolira, we can be pretty sure that a pineapple syrup or infusion was a key ingredient. But that alone couldn't have accounted for its dramatic reputation. In 1889, Rudyard Kipling wrote that it was compounded of the shavings of cherubs' wings, the glory of a tropical dawn, the red clouds of sunset, and the fragments of lost epics by dead masters. While others wrote that it tastes like lemonade but comes back with the kick of a roped steer, and that it makes a gnat fight an elephant. We'll never know for sure what made Nicol's Pisco Punch so, well, punchy, but there's a compelling argument to be made that it might have been cocaine. In the late 19th century, it was used in various tonic wines and even soft drinks like the original Coca-Cola, so it's entirely possible that it might have been the secret ingredient, which would have needed to be especially secret after 1914 when its use was banned. Pisco John's Pisco Punch remained incredibly popular right up until Prohibition went into effect in 1919. Sadly, Duncan Nicol died in 1926, never getting to see repeal and never having revealed his recipe. But repeal did come, and Pisco Punch came back with it, especially as a bottled cocktail, which, as I talked about in bottle 51, B&B, were quite popular at the time. Which brings us back to my tiny bottle, Inca Pisco. As I said at the beginning, finding information about its history was really challenging, which is why it felt like I'd won the lottery when I found that article. According to it, in the 1940s, Mario Ranuzzi, eventual founder of Inca Pisco, got inspired by Pisco Punch's success in San Francisco and wondered if he could bring it back to Peru. A 1944 newspaper ad for his new bottled cocktail featured identical typography to a brand of bottled Pisco Punch in the US. Alas, it didn't take off in Peru, causing Ranuzzi to change directions, launch Inca Pisco, and start shipping it north to the US. I found a trademark filing for Inca Pisco in Italy in 1962, which is also when it started showing up in US newspaper articles and advertising. I can't tell when they stopped producing. It continued to appear in newspaper ads into the 1980s, although by the late 80s, it's more often being sold in classified ads as a collectible item rather than a drink. Based on its tax strip, my bottle is from 1977 or earlier. I get the idea that Inca Pisco was maybe always more of a novelty item than an actual quality Pisco export, but who knows? I am excited to try it. Do you have any Inca Pisco figurines stashed away? Have you tasted the Pisco inside it? Let me know in the comments below or at My Tiny Bottles on social media or on my website, mytinybottles.com. There you'll find pictures of this bottle in all its glory. And don't forget to check out my Patreon, where I post research notes and fun tidbits I find along the way. If you're a paid supporter, you'll also get access to bonus audio and video content, plus a variety of perks. Cheers!